Hey guys, welcome to another video of AI for Architects, and today I'm excited because I want to show you one of the successions of the renderings I've done in the past. And this one here is interior rendering done with BIM and then brought into real-time engine and then enhanced with AI on Photoshop, of course. But I want to kind of go through my workflow of how to create one of these great images, and I hope you guys like it. So before that, I just want to let you guys know that this weekend I actually went to the All Things Open AI conference hosted in Durham, and it was great, right? Like a lot of use cases. Of course, it was not specifically related to architecture or design, but it was great to see all the use cases of people using AI, whether you use OpenAI or whether you use Claude or Perplexity. It was great to see how people use it to create apps, to do social media, to create marketing, to create images. And something, if there was one takeaway that I got out of that, is that we're early. We're still early, so I know that sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming to see what people are creating on social media or LinkedIn, and you just see those images or creations of people, and you kind of already feel that you're already late, right? Because they just seem so good that a lot of times, even me, I feel like overwhelmed when I see amazing things created with AI that I'm like, I'm not gonna catch up to that. It just feels overwhelming. But something out of the conference that I got is we're still early. People are still testing. Everybody still is the Wild West. Everybody's still trying to figure out what's the best way to incorporate AI into their workflow. So the great thing about here is that this channel is mainly to do that. It's kind of showing you my workflow and how I incorporate AI to enhance the workflow that as architects and designers we already do, and we're already kind of going through these conflicts. So I hope you can understand me and I can understand you of the sometimes these troubles and tribulations sometimes that we go as designers. So just to start, so how to create an image like this. So the first process that I followed was, so if I go back to ArchiCAD, right, and I know that I'm using ArchiCAD, but you just think about these as using Revit or using Rhino or SketchUp. The reason I'm trying to kind of keep using ArchiCAD is to show you that you don't need the most advanced 3D modeling tool to come up with amazing results. Even I sometimes get the trouble of thinking like, oh my gosh, I need to use 3ds Max, I need to use Blender, I need to use Rhino. And even though those tools might help you to add more detail and things like that, and they're helpful on their own way, many times architecture, especially if you are in a small or medium-sized architecture firms, you start right away from BIM, right? You start right away from Revit, you start right away from ArchiCAD or Vectorworks right away, and there's not a lot of exploration sometimes that you do through Rhino or SketchUp, unless there's like something that is more for marketing or you're just in the very conceptual phase. So that's why sometimes I like to start with ArchiCAD. Sometimes I will start with Rhino, but for now, just letting you guys know, like, yeah, I mean, you can do amazing things out of BIM, right? Yeah, as a base. So something that I start with is the model, and I use Enscape as my real-time engine. Now you can use any other tool, whether it's DeFi, Twinmotion. I mean, all these real-time engines, they are both giving you very kind of close results to each other. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other one. I would say each rendering tool has its strengths. So I wouldn't necessarily say use this one. I use Enscape just because of the nice workflow it has with ArchiCAD, that I can actually bring objects into ArchiCAD and see them from here. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as the other ones, right? It has the live sync and all that. So that's why I use Enscape. But one of the tips I want to give you when modeling here is like, so I did a degree on digital arts on school in Spain, and the main thing that we learned was 3ds Max, V-Ray, and Unreal Engine. And the main really takeaway that I got out of it is just that it really matters how much detail you put into the models, because you can be using V-Ray, you can be using Corona, you can be using Unreal Engine. At the end of the day, if you don't, I think a lot of the times is about the sculpting, where it's the 3D model, and the materials play like such a big part of it that the render engine almost doesn't even matter as much as the 3D model and the materials you're using and the quality of the materials you use. So something I want to really express is like, if you really want to come out with these photorealistic renderings, you really need to start putting a lot of detail in the modeling and the quality of the materials you use for this. And sometimes I feel you, sometimes it's hard to kind of find the right material, especially with ArchiCAD and everything. That's why a lot of people use 3ds Max and Corona and V-Ray, but a lot of the times that's why we need to be resourceful with what we have. So a lot of the times, for instance, yes, I couldn't model any of the details that you see on the doors, right? There's no, normally if you are doing real archways, you're really modeling these little handles here and everything. And I kind of realized I missed that once I was actually doing the rendering in Photoshop. But that's why we want to get the help from AI or for a render or a real-time engine that already has those devices in there. Only there's specific ones. You could potentially I could have modeled that, but just know that a lot of times comes to detail as far as the lamps, the books, you know, like if the thresholds of the doors, the beams that are the right thing, adding lights. So a lot of times comes up to that. So for instance, right now I'm looking at this and I just realized that I forgot to put the wall base, right? And I'm like, oh gosh, you know, but the more detail you put into 3D model, the better it's gonna look. So this is how I start. It's just like, if you think about it, it's just a simple, you know, room. It's just that you really need to start with getting the composition of your image. And if you don't really have the exact image or the exact, you know, like there, you know, at least have like an idea of the corner of where you want it, so you can really focus on the model here. Because if you think about it, like the model here on here, you don't have lights here, right? I just have lights on this side of the building. I don't have lights here. Well, I got the rays here, but I don't have the 3D model, the lights here, because I was not focusing on that. My view was focused on this. So also always start with setting up the view so you know where to put the more detail on. Like you know, I put a lot of detail here, but if you see outside the model, there's nothing. I mean, there's no detail as far as the lamps, you know, anything, the lighting, nothing, right? So really focus on setting up the view, so then you can focus on the model inside that view without you having to be wasting time on other things that don't really matter as much. So that's the number 2 tip I think I have already. But that's kind of what I started with. So, you know, just remembering to model it correct, set up the view, model the details, and just start putting attention to the materials. Make sure like you're adding already the materials here, or not in whatever your rendering engine is. Make sure that they are high quality materials, and you actually work on the bump and make sure that they are being, how they call, portrayed correct as far as reflection and roughness of it. So now I'm gonna show you, this is kind of what I got in Enscape, right? So all these were, a lot of these lights and all these things were added within Enscape, but in ArchiCAD you add the lights in ArchiCAD, and then you modify it in ArchiCAD, and it will update in Enscape here. The same, not with this one, but with these ones here, you have to kind of get that in there. What I did is, you come here, we got like here, like I got, can I show you this in sky? I got mountains. I kind of got sick of the HDRI. It was not giving me what I wanted. It was just doing some weird stuff, so I decided to use not a HDRI where most of the people suggest. And yes, for most of the times a HDRI might be better. For this case, for me in particular, I decided that, you know what, that's fine. I'm just gonna do it this way, because this is the first time I will actually render without HDRI, and I wanted to just see the results. So a lot of these items here are Enscape, most of them actually, and the only thing that is in the space, it's in ArchiCAD, is the model, right? But then everything else here, it's Enscape. And then kind of what I kind of created the assets. This asset I had to download it from BIM objects, from a 3D model library. So sometimes you're gonna find that if you're just using a library for a specific rendering engine, whether it's Enscape, Twinmotion, or there's gonna be limitations as far as the beds, as far as the cabinets, as far as the plants that you can use. So you always want to be kind of subscribing to a complete library online that you can access for 2D models and materials and HDRIs that you can bring in eventually to your rendering engine, and you can like have it as an addition. So for instance, Enscape, everything here is Enscape except for the bed. But the bed, when I was using the Enscape bed, there was just something about that bed that was just not looking great, and every bed I would put from Enscape or ArchiCAD was just not giving anything. And because it's just such a focal point, the bed, even though I would just look at here, you still see the bed. So the bed was such an important component. Is like I had to bring another bed from a different component, and that's what it takes sometimes. Like you just spend the time kind of trying to find the right assets for a specific thing, also depending on the importance of it, right? Like maybe I wouldn't have spent that much time on this plant, but because it was a big point, the Enscape really, it just, again, set up the view. Once I start kind of setting up the objects, getting the lighting in there, setting the sky, right? So you first of all start with the main, you make sure you set up a 2-point perspective, make sure you get it out to exposure or the exposure that you prefer. In the case whenever I'm working on this, I'm always set it up to high, just because the high and ultra don't have that much difference as far as the output, so you can kind of get an idea. But if I bring it to medium, for instance, it definitely changes the whole tonality, so you're not really getting how is it gonna look. So I will work on medium if your computer cannot handle it, and if you at this point you're just placing items in the space, then I will work on a medium setup. But once you kind of start getting the atmosphere of the environment as far as the lighting and how it's getting composed with the materials and everything, then is when I will go at least to high and work from a high. So then you can start really getting, as you can see, it still kind of looks very similar to what it was before. Is it until ultra that it starts kind of looking a little different, right? So I will definitely work within high and ultra, so you can, at least once the items are in place, so you can kind of really get the real time, like how is it gonna look at the end. I could have just put a little lighting here if you think about it, because it looks a little too dark. But yeah, once you have the view done here, something I did was in the output here, I made sure to export the object ID, material ID, depth channel, and alpha channel, because for me to create because this is a good rendering. So this is a rendering that you would see. This is the basic standard of an architecture firm rendering, right? Like you'll see it and it looks good, but it still looks animated, right? Still looks like it came out of Twinmotion or DeFi, or it looks good, but it still looks animated. So here is where we are in this trouble, where how can we take things to the next level? And in architecture firm, this is where we stay, right? We just go render this, we go to Photoshop, change the contrast and the detail to enhance it a little bit, and that's it. So to me, it's like, okay, how can I take this to a photorealistic level without us having to hire an archivist artist, without us having to rely on 3ds Max and V-Ray and Corona? How can we make a photorealistic rendering out of this, right? So a lot of this is kind of learning basic things in Photoshop, right? So, and with Photoshop, I don't mean like you really need to learn like very difficult things. Like 90% of my workflow in Photoshop are masking, clipping, and generative fill. Those are the 90% of the tools I use in Photoshop are those things. And maybe if you can add 99% if you say the filter gallery and the camera raw. And that's all I do. So you see all these layers here, all of them are just, so I started all these layers here that you see the enhancements. So if I'm gonna turn off, so I do have, as you're saying, like whenever you're coming from Enscape or DeFi, pretty much all the rendering engines at this point create the object ID material. So you really want to make sure you get a rendering engine that has this, because this is so useful whenever you are going to do post-production. You could potentially do this without without the material or object ID, but it just saves you a lot of time to be doing this and that, because you can just select something and it will automatically select, and you're not spending your time trying to point everything, right? So that's something I did. If I come down here, just so you can see everything here, and a lot of time is photoshopping. So from here are the 3 layers that I started with. This was the rendering out. Let me see if I can come here for a second here, because I am not telling you the whole story about my workflow here if I don't show you this. These are the 3 renderings that I started with. So this is the classic landscape rendering, right? Then I also had the a white rendering, right? So if I take out this, put it dark, and then go here normal, I start with this here just to kind of add just a hint of line weight and a little bit of the ambient occlusion of it. And then I got another rendering here with just a little bit. This was the AI enhanced rendering from Enscape that I got, which really at the end of the day, the only thing that adds is a little bit more sharpness to the thing, and maybe it just sharpens out a little bit the materials. So this is like something you can do in Enscape here. And then just so I can just show you, I don't know if you are an Enscape user, but here you have this magic tool here that says AI Enhancer, and once you click on it, it will automatically upload that to the cloud and it will enhance the rendering. It really just a way of enhancing it. It doesn't really do anything like major, but it just sharpens. It really just sharpens the thing. And I think it really works better. I think if you have people in there, I think it will like change their faces to something more realistic. But I start with these 3 faces, and if you think about it, after that, I just pretty much start using. Wait, I forgot that I should have gone to this 17. Okay, and then oh yeah. Well, I did a lot of things here that I kind of, with the object ID, I will start kind of like touching base, just darken the colors a little bit with the clipping mask, right? Like I would just go here, change the levels of the TNGs, the TNG here, change the levels of the beams a little bit, the curves, levels. But I was just saying, like a lot of these is really just going to the material ID, right? Selecting it, right? Going here and selecting, for instance, the beams I wanted to kind of get a little darker. And you can potentially do this in Enscape. I'd rather do it here sometimes because I can adjust the colors to exactly what I want, whereas I feel like sometimes in the rendering engines you adjust something, but a lot of the times because of the sound and everything, the lighting might be different, and then you end up adjusting the colors to a point where like it's great in a place that you want, but if you want to do a rendering elsewhere, then it changes there. So yeah, I normally use that. Then here I start adding plants here. So here's when I start using generative fill, right? So I would normally come here, go to the image, do this, and do generative fill, put like maybe plant. And the great thing is that it will enhance it and create a better plant. Now, it doesn't work every time, so I will always suggest you to kind of try to do most of the things in your rendering engine. But Photoshop has really come a long way with the generative fill, and I use it as much as I can. Right, so for instance here I hid the plant because I kind of realized, okay, I'm gonna add that plant in Photoshop just because it was just looking too dark. I added these new curtains, and for me to get this, I didn't just got it from Photoshop, from Pinterest or something. What I did is I went to Midjourney, right, and I brought my image in the editor, came here, and if I say view all, right, so I added my image to the editor, and then I created this kind of the same workflow that I have explained before. I uploaded the image to ChatGPT, asked it to describe the image. Once you can describe the image, you brought this in here, you edit it, you bring this in here along with your image, you retexture it, and it will give you these other renderings, right? So I brought these in with like a hard line weight. I got to retexture, put this on here, and then I start kind of testing. Just because I want to really, it's great that you see this because it really helps you explore the ambience and because Midjourney has one of the best rendering for atmospheres out there, and if you do this, it helps you really explore how can lighting work, how can you really create like a very nice atmosphere, right? Whether it's the lighting, the detail of the walls. But along with this, I start kind of realizing, man, I really need to change this. I don't know how to download these things. and I start kind of doing a lot of this, playing with it until I got ones that I like, right? And once I kind of discover the ones that I like, and I copy that here, right? And it came almost perfectly. Yeah, I had to do a few changes here and there, but for the most part it came in there. I had to do little cleanups here and there, but then I was able to locate it there the right way. So that was a big thing. Along with that, I kind of copied that one and put it there, and I was able to generative fill, use that one, right? And then I was able to, with the generative fill, I was able to again select the plant, put a plant, and it changed the plant to this, and it was great, right? Because this looks a lot more realistic. So suddenly I end up with a much more realistic image here. Right, so you see how it looks like. Oh, and then the last thing I did, just to be honest here, I mean, once you kind of have this one here, I use this last step. I use Create Enhancer. So this was the image I uploaded, right? And this is the image it gave me. So it kind of sharpened the image, as you can see. The materials got enhanced and everything. So I wouldn't. It kind of really kind of helped this blend a little bit better. So I didn't use it like straight away out of this. Like once it kind of gave me that, I brought it in here, and then I just kind of gave it like a little tone, like 70%, and that's pretty much the image. And then from there, let's see. From there, then is when you have your final image, right? Like then is when I come here, final image. And that's how you ended up with the final image. Now, you're saying, okay, that's great. So how can I create The great thing about this, like once you have something with this quality that is photorealistic, this took me a good hour in Photoshop. That, you know, once I did the post-production, 1 hour, potentially hour and a half in Photoshop, you know how to. The first time you do this might take you 2 to 3 hours, but the more you do it, the more you're gonna kind of know exactly what to do and where to change these things. So once you have that, I came here to clean, and you can use Sora, you can use anything you want to really. And I gave it again out of the ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT to give me a film of a description of this, and then I uploaded the image, and this is the animation I got. Now normally this animation will have taken me a bunch of hours to do in Unreal, just because not just so the magic out of it is like if I would have done this animation directly from Enscape on Unreal, it will look like an animation, right? It still will look animated, but the fact that I'm bringing this from already a photorealistic image and telling it to create a video, it looks a lot more photorealistic, which would have been very hard for me to do this in Unreal Engine to this level of detail. I will have to have some really good premium materials, very good premium models, a lot of stuff that I will have to do to kind of get it to these levels. So I believe this is the recipe. As of right now, the workflow, of course, it can keep improving. That's kind of what I have for you. So that's, and then from there, you're able to kind of get like 3 different materials, 3 different animations, and then you can put those into DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere and create like a very high-end rendering. And with this, you can have, I mean, I have not done this yet, but you can have an upscaler where you can really enhance the quality of the video, right? That will be the next step that I haven't done really, but from these you will upscale the video to be sharpened to, you know, just give you a better quality. You see a little pixelation here, and then from there you create your own little video. But that's the workflow, you know, BIM, from BIM to real-time engine, from real-time engine to post-production in Photoshop, and from post-production in Photoshop you use AI for the final enhancement and the animation of the image. That's what I have for you. I wish I could tell you you can just click a button directly from ArchiCAD and it gives you an amazing photorealistic rendering, but the truth is like this is still a lot better than any other quality product. Like if you will have, I mean, now that I have understand really how important it is in 3ds Max and Corona and V-Ray to kind of get the 3D models and get the atmosphere right, believe it or not, this is saving you weeks, if not like hundred, like, not gonna say hundred of hours, but it's the same, you at least 2 days of just being in a computer, right? So even though it might seem a little laborious to do the post-production in Photoshop and get it all right and for realistic, I do believe that this is still a lot better than you just staying with a just regular image into motion. Now, that's fine. I'm not saying that's anything wrong with that, but if you really want to take your product to the next level, it's not gonna take 2 extra days. It might just take an extra 5 to 6 hours, right, to get a lot better results and a lot more output, because now you're not just getting a much better output as far as the photorealistic image, you are also getting photorealistic animations out of it that you can actually put in a marketing campaign. You can make your clients a lot excited without them having to pay a little, we'd only paying a little bit more money. And this is what really is gonna bring you a lot more clients, so you make a lot more money too. So hope that's it for today, and I'll try to bring you another video in the next time.